Hi, this is Dan Harris, and welcome to the Ironbird Podcast. We're launching a podcast at MBAA in partnership with Flyhouse. Today's podcast, we have a mix of airplane operators and airplane brokers. We're going to go through what that dynamic looks like when you're looking at a client, who's the best client for one of each, and how we kind of work together, but also are a little bit of frenemies, as you may say. I'll start to my right, and I'll have you introduce yourself, your company, and maybe just a quick information about your space, or at least your company's space in the aviation ecosystem.
David McCown, and I'm president of Chapman Freeborn Americas. Chapman Freeborn was founded back in 1973, an air charter broker. We've currently got about 450 team members around the globe, including the Americas, where we've got about 60 people, Europe, Middle East, Asia, Africa. We work with all segments of customers. One of our big primary lines of business is cargo, but we do business jets as well as large Part 121 charters. We work with corporations, governments, high net worth individuals. We, in fact, also work with air charter operators as our customers, not only using your capacity, but also doing supplemental lift. So that's pretty much a summary.
Some locations, they don't have that expertise, right?
As well as product.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you have customers who have large group charter needs, and that's not necessarily the forte of a Part 135 operator, we can provide that extension for you. I think even with Fly Alliance, we did a cargo charter a couple of months ago for about 90 dogs that we were taking out of Gaza.
Correct.
That were abandoned dogs that needed to get brought over to the United States. And Chapman Freeborn has a specialty division called Intradco that moves exotics, horses, giraffes, all kinds of animals. And so Fly Alliance had a customer, correct?
Correct.
That needed to move something like 70 unfortunately abandoned dogs in Gaza. We worked with them to get them moved out of Gaza and across the border to Israel, got a Palestinian veterinarian on it, brought them over to JFK to find new homes for those dogs.
Wow,
that's incredible.
It's a real symbiotic relationship.
That's a cool story.
Yeah.
Kevin, why don't you introduce yourself?
Very good. Yeah, so I'm Kevin Wargo with Fly Alliance. I'm the CEO of the company. We started in 2019, and currently today we have about 30 airplanes in our fleet. We're based in Orlando, Florida. About 250 total people. We're spread out between retail charter, where we service the end user, wholesale, where we support many different broker partners all around the world. And then also we have a division for aircraft maintenance, where we have a Part 145 FAA repair station. Our bases for that are Teterboro, Miami, Orlando, and then about 10 mobile vans that travel all around, predominantly the South Florida area. And then lastly, we have a pretty large aircraft parts company. And so we acquire aircraft, about 5 every month, to disassemble and then sell the parts all over the world.
Wow.
It's been a really nice growth plan for us. And recently we've acquired a lot of new airplanes, specifically Cessnas with these XLS Gen 2 aircraft. And they've been a really good solution, very reliable, awesome for that New York to Florida market. And then that's also helped us expand into the Cessna Latitude as well. And so the Fly Alliance fleet has been very much revamped and kind of increased with the year of manufacture in the last couple of years.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Jack, everyone knows who you are, but give us a quick background on yourself.
Yeah, so
and
I'm Jack Lambert, CEO of Flyhouse. Flyhouse is two companies. We are an aircraft management company as well. We currently have 9 aircraft on certificate, worldwide, obviously operator. But we've also created an app that will allow the end user to book directly with the owner or operator, which hasn't existed until today. And so, just I'm happy to be here. Glad to have you guys here with us. And Dan, appreciate your time as well.
Yeah, you got it. Kevin, I want to kind of ask you the first question as an airplane operator that sells to direct retail clients, has products. How do you balance working with direct retail customers and working with the wholesale industry of brokers? Like, how do you find that balance? What do you think works really well?
Yeah, so on our retail desk, we have a total of 15 salespeople. They do about $100 million of revenue every year. and they look to put the customers on our fleet whenever possible. There's only about 20% crossover where we're able to fit the $20 million worth of business onto our own fleet, where the other 80 million, we're working with a lot of other operators to supply. And it's all about efficiency and reducing the overall costs of the flight. And so that relationship is very strong between our retail desk and our wholesale desk. But I would say more important is our relationship with our many wholesale partners, because we have a pretty big fleet. We need to fly about $120 million a year on our fleet. And so while 20 million comes nicely over from our retail desk, the other 100 million is made up of the awesome partners that we have out there. And so our job as a wholesale operator is to be able to perform on time, reliable, good communication. And that's something that over the last 18 months has just become even more important in the industry, because that's the standard, that's the expectation. And so process improvement and different ways to reach out to our brokers and really find out what makes their themselves look good with their customer is our focus.
And when you're looking at good partners from the brokerage standpoint, where do you see the on the broker side, what makes a good partner or a good broker, do you think?
Yeah, so recently I've taken about 25 meetings with different wholesale partners in the last, this has been 60 days.
Yeah.
And so my goal was to go out there and listen to what that answer is. And the common theme I heard were two things. One was, we want transparency multiple days in advance if it's not looking good. So it seems as if a broker would prefer to know 2 days, 3 days out that, like, we have an aircraft that became unavailable for some reason. And they'd rather us tell them in advance so that then they can find a great solution without a lot of drama or issues. And so that's a new theme that we've heard. And so that's something that we've encouraged our team to, like, just share the info. Like, if we have a crew that calls out sick and there doesn't appear to be a solve, the open dialogue is really important. The second thing is the cancellation terms in the industry on one-ways seems to have changed significantly. And it used to be, we all kind of know that like 100% cancellation fee was like the standard, and it wasn't really wavered very often. And now we're finding that, you know, the same people that are very understanding to us if there's going to be a projected issue are the ones that, you know, we want to help out, and they have a change with their schedule. How do we make that cancellation penalty go away so we're going to be here for the next 100 trips with that partner, not the next, 2 or 3 days.
Yeah. And I think the cancellations policy is an interesting thing, because when you look at different programs of jet cards or even a fraction, that cancellation policy is very different on the fractional and jet card side than it is on the charter side, right? Mm-hmm. So I guess it's balancing that out so the consumer can feel a little bit less pain on those flight changes versus charter. I guess, David, on your end, when you're looking at operators to work with, what do you look for, and what do you see as quality operators that you feel comfortable putting your clients on board with?
Oh, well, I think Kevin hit one of the points right there in terms of the transparency, because we know things happen. I mean, this is a very sophisticated business. You're an operator. You're running, sophisticated machines with many parts that need maintenance, pilots, crew that you're swapping out, and so that transparency up front helps us go ahead and sort of minimize the pain if we have to find an alternative. And so I believe that reliability, I think that making sure that they will listen to our specific needs of what we're asking for, like position in the night before. Don't, if we've got to fly it out at 6 a.m, don't try to position in 4 a.m, but call us at 3 saying, oh my gosh, the pilot's a no-show or something like that. So there is definitely the reliability factor, and I think having a depth of fleet is important for us too, because I think it's important when an operator does have an issue that pops up, if they do have replacements where they can back it up, that's always preferable. We don't go for the cheapest price. We're trying to find the most cost-effective solution for a mission, but that doesn't mean necessarily it's the cheapest price. And so having a deep bench of aircraft and crew, and obviously working with us when there is a look, we all see what the cancellation terms are up front. Something pops up, maybe we can work through them rather than getting the 100% cancellation terms. You got to think long term. This is a long-term relationship, not short-termism, gouging the customer, because neither one of us will get that customer back. It's our customer bringing to you, and suddenly the customer's paying $100,000 for some issue, and you didn't need to do that.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of things but reliability is what it comes down to, because there's nothing worse, and I don't care what the price is or how much we're all going to make on it, is not being able to fulfill the customer's needs.
Yeah.
It's never any fun, and so that's what we look for.
Jack, what do you think makes a bad aircraft broker?
Wow,
you've dealt with a couple of them,
yeah,
right?
A little bit. I mean, listen, it's. I think the word on the table is transparency, and I think operators have created a little bit themselves of being lack of being not transparent enough. But it's not a level playing field, and it really never was.
Yeah.
I think that having the relationship. We're in a relationship business, and you got to know and know who you're working with. And I tell the team all the time, if you don't know who that person is, and in today's world, it's very difficult because you don't really, people don't go meet people.
Yeah.
I mean, this is why we're here. I mean, this is the mecca of private aviation, and this is why you need. But operators don't bring people here. But go back to your point. I think the lack of transparency on the pricing. I think brokers are overselling. But we see it in operators too. Operators are overselling their trips, creating the confusion in the marketplace.
Trying to squeeze that extra trip into their schedule where
100%.
If everything goes right of these next 5 trips, I can do that trip. Let me just jam it into the schedule.
Yeah, but I think from an operator perspective, and Kevin, you'll appreciate this, is dealing with the folks that have been around the industry for 40, 50 years. That they've got that level of professionalism. They're not just some guy with a cell phone or a girl with a cell phone.
Yeah.
And I think we've seen more and more of that over the past 10 years, that the broker doesn't even understand the difference between a light jet and a midjet.
Yeah.
And
I think especially when something goes wrong, right?
Right. And I think the education part of it is probably what's lacking in the industry. We haven't really educated. We're always so busy going, selling. That nobody's really took the time to really educate the end user, educate the broker.
Well, it's so easy to become a broker, right? There's no real requirements that are needed. Dave, what do you think when someone's looking to say, all right, I want to charter broker, what are things that they should be asking to say, all right, is this a legitimate company, or do I feel comfortable with this company?
Well, I think with any operator or broker, I think it's important to understand if they're financially stable. Mm-hmm. Because I think whether it's a broker, where there's been a lot of horror stories, I've been in the industry for about 27 years, I've seen a few horror stories, where brokers will shut down with other people's money. But I also think on the operator side, it's important to make sure that you're dealing with a financially stable operator, just in terms of you never want to be working with somebody that's cutting corners or tempted to cut corners. But I do think making sure that the broker has been around for a while. I would look at, there is no rating system for a broker. I know that Argus has come out with some rating systems. There used to be an organization called the Air Charter Association of North America. I actually used to be chairman of it for brokers, and we worked a lot with the DOT in terms of putting forward the new broker role of the broker.
Yeah.
And that was finally set in stone, I think, in 2018. But I think a lot of it's going to be, do you have references, customer references? Look, if the broker doesn't have any customer references, if they're working with Fortune 500 companies, if they're working with, this, it doesn't have to be a Fortune 500, but I would always look for references.
Yeah.
Not just to make sure that they know what they're doing, but to make sure that they are trustworthy.
Yeah.
So I also think that, I think Jack talked about it. There's an education issue. You will find brokers out there. I mean, you will find it across the industry because there's no formal training process where the customer knows more about private jets than the salesperson, right?
Yeah,
You've got the person, they don't know the FBO, they don't know the exact ins and outs of a specific aircraft configuration. So it is, it's a small industry. A lot of us, our customers come because somebody else within the industry had a terrible experience with their customer. Their customer's like, I'm finally going to give that other guy a shot. And so a lot of recruiting takes place within the industry. And so I think you guys will know, at my company, for example, you may know some of the people because you might have worked with them in a past life. Yeah. You know they know what they're talking about. You know they're not going to bring to you an unqualified piece of business. And I'm answering the question about how do you choose a broker. We will pay you.
Yeah.
Well,
we will pay you on time.
Yeah, 100%.
There is a whole trust thing there about, you don't want to lock up your availability and not, or fly the aircraft. It's not a lot of credit going on out there these days, but there's a number of ways to look at it. There is unfortunately not a standard registry of brokers. It's something we had actually proposed to the DOT. To have a registry of brokers that have they did not want to do it because they weren't sure how they were going to fund it. And it was too small of an issue for them to say, who's going to manage that?
What does the DOT require for a broker contractually? What are those things that, if you get a contract from a broker, what should the retail customer be looking at? All right, these things must be on the contract.
Well, first of all...
Or really anyone that's chartering a flight.
Right, and I want to make something clear here is that one of the things that the DOT did figure out when they were putting the new rules out for the role of the broker was identifying and acknowledging the fact that operators are the biggest source of broking within the industry.
Yeah.
You will look at a broker like Chapman Freeborn or an Air Partner before acquired by Wheels Up, ACS, so on and so forth. But the majority of broking that is going on is other operators that are going off fleet.
Yeah.
Now, there's pros and cons to that because just because you're an operator doesn't necessarily mean you're better at broking and identifying qualified operators as supplemental lift than somebody who does that as a primary business model. I think that when you are a broker, and this has happened with operators where the customer went to the operator, thought they were getting the operator's aircraft, the operator went off fleet, didn't disclose that they were actually brokering it out to a third party. And so that's not full transparency to the customer. You should always be letting the customer know that you're not the owner or the operator of that aircraft, even if you're an operator, but if you're going off fleet. And so you need to let them know that you're acting as agent on their behalf, or if you are acting as agent on behalf of that operator, you need to disclose to the customer that you're acting as agent for that operator so they understand you are, there is no conflict of interest. You need to be clear on that. There are obviously, you got to make sure the T's and C's are there for the cancellation terms. There is no standard terminology that needs to be there other than you really do need to disclose as a broker that you are not holding out as the carrier.
Yep.
Because A, that is not fair, but B, it gives the wrong perception to the customer that in fact you have operational control, which you do not as a broker.
Yeah.
In a broker role.
Do you think we'll ever get to a chance where the terms and conditions or the cancellation terms are standard across all operators?
Certainly you'd like to think so, right? We all want that. I think the difference is, I talk about payment, right? You talk about bad broker, not getting paid. As operators, we say no dough, no go, right? But there's brokers out there that provide that level of transparency and that are going to pay you.
Yeah.
And so you can give that level of credit knowing that, hey, I'm booking with Chapman Free or they're booking with us.
Yeah.
Hey, they can pay us after the trip. But it's so difficult. Kevin, you can attest to it as well. Dealing with the 5 credit cards on a $10,000 trip.
Yeah.
Just to hold, or the broker that calls at 2:00 when he knew at 9:00 in the morning and had a chance to wire, and it's Friday afternoon. Those are the ones that cause the heartache and the chaos that we see on that side.
Yeah. Kevin, when you've got a new client that's coming in and they want to go through different products of flying privately, how do you walk a client through the different options that they have, because you have quite a few? How do you walk a client through the different options that they have to fly privately?
Yeah, I think the best way to have somebody understand what it's like to work with Fly Alliance specifically would be let's just do one trip together.
Yeah.
Because it's the easy entry point, obviously. And so we really focus on that one trip, and we try to provide great service for that. A thing that we give to our sales team is we'll actually allow for someone to have that first flight free if they end up making a commitment thereafter. So the incentive, first flight free incentive, is they buy a 25-hour block of time, and then they'll have that first flight free. It's limited based on what the flight is, but it all starts with that first trip. And then if it goes well, which typically it does, then we end up talking about how we can be the best partner long term. And that could be through additional charter trips because the client is okay to pay the fluctuation in the market based on the date and routing that they're going to travel, or if they want to be more locked into a contractual like 25-hour commitment. And that is very easy and simple for many people as well. So there are primary two ways to travel.
What's the largest size commitment that someone could sign up with Fly Alliance outside of buying an airplane?
Yeah, so it's fully customizable.
Yeah.
Say that most people can project out their next 6 months of what they're going to need, and that's where we would recommend people make their purchase. In some cases, that's 100 hours.
Yeah.
But in most cases, that's that 25 to 50 hour, which is between a $200,000 commitment and a $500,000 commitment, depending on the size of aircraft and the number of hours.
Is that, and Jack, for you guys, when you're looking from the app standpoint, where are you seeing from an hour standpoint more customers on the app? Is it more one-off flights, or is it that 25-hour or below flyer?
Yeah, so I think it's a combination. I think we did our soft launch in May, and I think it's for us it's expanding the TAM, and I think we're getting more and more. I mean, we talked earlier about getting on our phones. I mean, I was a BlackBerry guy, so I'm never going to an iPhone, and I'm never going to order an Uber on my iPhone, and now I've got an iPhone and I'm ordering Ubers.
Yeah.
So I think it's it's over time. I think you're going to see it. Not naive to the fact that people want to talk to somebody. I want to talk to David.
Yeah.
I want to talk to Kevin. But I think over time, it's how do we create efficiencies in the marketplace?
Yeah.
As an operator, that we call it the time suck, is all the phone calls, all the emails regarding one trip. If I can solve this through technology, and allow the consumer or the operator to focus on the other things that they do well. Focus on your own retail customers. If we can provide that, the efficiency, it's all about the efficiency.
Yeah.
And eliminating all the time suck. And I think over time, listen, it's going to be it's a progress, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you got to get the first one, get the second one,
Yeah.
and move on. I think there is a benefit to doing it, and it's a bigger conversation on the jet card and the hourly rate or the hours, 25 hours, prepaying. I'd love to just get your thoughts on is there big value in a sense that if I paid 25 hours up front, what's the value that I'm going to get? Is it just the efficiency? I don't have to sign paperwork every time? I mean, what?
Yep. So for the way that the Fly Alliance program works, typically there's an incentive to make that large of a commitment because that's a very big financial commitment. It's probably 10 to 12 trips. It could be a lot of different trips over time. The ease is really the factor because the client has chosen and they would like to utilize our services, but they don't want to go through the negotiation of every single trip. And so they simply debit away at their balance on their hours. So if it's a 2.4 hour trip, the aircraft category is secured. They're able to flex up to a heavy jet and flex all the way down to a light jet. And so all the pricing and all the rates are established in advance. Yes.
Yeah.
So the numbers.
Yeah.
They know the numbers. We know the numbers. Our operations team who does the fulfillment knows the numbers.
And what's the contracting look like? If I'm a jet card customer, I want to book an airplane, what's that process look like versus what's the charter process look like?
Yeah, so currently for Fly Alliance, it's not a very technical, big tech savvy process. It's pretty simple. It's just, usually it's a text message from the principal that says, this is the routing, and we say it's 2.4 hours, and they write back, okay, great, go ahead, whatever the word is. And then on the back end, we do all the booking process of securing the aircraft and handling all the details. But that's the ease that we talk about in the program because it is that easy, and typically then maybe the executive can have the assistant handle the booking process rather than having to think through the negotiations each time.
Yeah. Has it ever backfired that ease? Has someone like sent something wrong or a wrong airport or anything like that?
A couple times that's happened, and that's human error.
Yeah.
But it's also most of the time fixable with good partners.
Yeah.
Because hey, we booked the reverse routing, and
Yeah.
the other operator will help us in that situation. Or there's a lot of trips out there, and trips
move
can be
things
fulfilled.
around.
I mean, that's a relationship. That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Relationship business.
Dan, we were talking about it a little earlier. I think some people wonder what the role and the value add of a broker is. And I've been in the industry since 1996, and we launched the first online reservation system back then during the internet bubble as a broker, technically, called aircharter.com, trying to bring air charter more to the forefront to the traveling public at the points of purchase. Jet membership, jet cards, were actually an innovation by brokers. Back in 1999, a company called Flight Time that had acquired Wyvern went out and created a charter-based fixed pricing point-to-point program to compete with fractions. And it was the first company to launch to have a program based on category of aircraft. After what the rental car business, where I actually worked for that company, so I know quite a bit about it. So when you look at what the broker does for the industry, some of the greatest innovation in the business aviation industry have been brokers, because their focus is on sales and marketing and creating packaging where they understand might be more palatable to the market. Because if you look at what charter was back in the night, it still is when it's on demand, it's a little bit esoteric to the average Joe. What do you mean it's got a position in, or why is it $50,000 today when it was $37,000 last week? They don't like that. Right. So the advent or invention of the introduction of the jet card was productizing in a packaged way that was more palatable and understandable to the general public, which has helped arguably expand the market. And so a lot of taking it a little off course here, Dan, but I want to just make sure that we understand where brokers come in is they really help expand the market. They are an extension, a marketing and sales arm of operators, where the primary role is really what your value add is. You own and operate and run the aircraft and do it in a great way. And so I think we got to look at how do we continue to work and understand and recognize that partnership. Sure, we're sometimes going after the same customers. And no customer's forever, right? I mean, again, your customer might be the customer we let down last week or vice versa, but they're still going to stay in the industry, and we want to all work together to do a good job. And
where do you think the growth of the brokerage industry goes? Does it just turn into more brokers, the more smaller ones? Like where does the broker industry move towards?
I think as much as you want to belittle sort of the mom and pops, because it really is a relationship business, okay? And so it's amazing some of the portfolio, the 5 or 10 customers that a mom and pop will have that are just incredibly valuable customers to us, that we don't want to say, well, just because you're small, you didn't bring value to the industry, or you're not worthy of doing it. I think, so there will always be somebody who, I have seen people who have been in the industry and they worked for a big company like a Ascentiant or a NetJets or an Air Partner or a Wheels Up, but they leave the industry, but they still have relationships with some of those customers that still want to work with them, and they still know enough to be of value, and they will continue to reach out to the Fly Alliances and the other operators, or even other air charter brokers. Hey, I've got this customer, he wants this trip, can you do something for him? I think on the technology standpoint, and I think to the app you're doing in a way is a broker, but it's a high-tech broker where it's basically disintermediating people, at least some of the tasks that people do, but it is still a mechanism for bringing the buying audience, the target market, to the industry in a very user-friendly way, in a quick way, in an accurate way, in a transparent way. And so I do think technology is going to continue to play a part, whether it's the technology itself or where that technology is placed, because I think as we can, still the travel sites, there's a lot of untapped market out there because people don't think about charter. Well, there could be further integration with an item, Expedia is obviously leisure, but there's going to be instances where that was an itinerary that should have actually put forward a private jet option. And so I think also on the back end technology, the brokers could be part of helping optimize and taking on the risk of all of the unused segments. And I think Stellar Aero tried to do this and didn't quite get it done. Yeah. But where they're taking on the risk of all of the positioning legs or empty legs you might have, and they're able to do with algorithms, make some money at doing that and take on the risk. So I do think there's going to be all levels of brokers, and I think it's going to be an expansion through just your bread and butter, regular pound the pavement, but also through innovation. And that brokering could come from an operator that is also creating something that helps bring business to other operators, or just more people who are informed to see the opportunity and can identify the target market.
Yeah, I think the value is just the service level, right? The operator, we focus so hard, the day in and day out, and the grind that we have to go through every day with the FAA and making pilots sure that we're pilots and doing all that. That's been the focus for operators for forever. And so the value in the broker is to providing that level of service. The guy that has 5 customers pays his bills all year long with 5 customers because he provides a level of service that he doesn't get if it goes to an operator.
What do you think? Do you see? You've done this. You've brought on brokerage teams. Do you see more consolidation where either larger brokerages are going to scoop up smaller ones, or even operators are going to add more brokerages to their company?
I think both. I think you've already started to see it. It's difficult for an operator that has less than 8 airplanes to survive. We talked about it earlier, talking about base model airplanes. So if you have an airplane based in Palm Beach, the guy wants 40 hours. The airplane's got to leave Palm Beach.
Yeah.
It may not come back to Palm Beach to get 40 hours.
Yeah.
Sure, you can get 10, 15.
Yeah.
And so, an operator that has an 8 fleet has to think outside the box. Got to do dynamic pricing. Got to start floating the fleet. Otherwise, you're just going to be sitting here flying 15 hours and you can't pay your bills.
Yeah. How does Fly Alliance handle pricing and dynamic pricing models?
Yeah, so on the wholesale side, we think about the key bases for the different fleet sizes. So the medium size, Teterboro and Miami are the 2 primary locations. And so as a trip is requested, say out of Ohio, we're going to think about how to recover that empty price. And so our pricing will be more expensive out of Ohio to Miami than it would be out of Teterboro to Miami, whether it's 2 days out or 5 days out. If we see that there's already a trip taking us into Ohio the day prior, then the pricing actually gets back to maybe the same as what it would have been out of New York, or it would have lined up. And so we have a pricing tool internally that allows us to calculate the value of the trip that's being presented or the trip that's being requested. And so then we can aggressively price the trips that we want to win and kind of price to win at the right rate if we are going to win that odd trip. And so then when it expands to the larger airplanes like our super mediums or our heavy jets or our ultra long range, the algorithm changes because the Gulfstreams we want to fly across the country, the Globals and the G5s we want to fly across the Atlantic.
Yeah. And so how does a customer, if they're looking to get the best possible pricing, what would be the way that they would approach that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so it's not a question that
is it 2 weeks ahead of time, or where do you think the sweet spot is?
Yeah, so this isn't really an end user question. I think this is more of a broker question because the best thing for the broker to do is give all the looks to the operators that might be able to fulfill the mission. And so that's like the ones that would meet all the different categories, such as the reliability, the communication, and then give those looks out there. I think the best time for booking is maybe 5 days out in front of the trip, because that's where the pricing seems to be, the schedule seems to be the most locked in. It's a double-edged sword because if there's nothing on the board 5 days out, nobody knows how to price anything. So that's where it seems that locking in the best values starts to line up with where the point-to-points are so important. If we can go into Boca and out of Boca, that's going to be a $2,000 discount.
Yeah. So maybe some flexibility, that 5 day plus some flexibility from some airport movements. Mm-hmm. That's really interesting.
I mean, you talk about the bad brokering earlier, and I think, to your point, booking in advance and putting that trip away and signing off on it with Fly Alliance and making that done allows you to focus on something else, as opposed to not signing off on it, taking that quote to a fly house or to another operator to try to get an extra $500. And by the way, the trip's tomorrow now because you've waited so long, created so much chaos.
Yeah.
Now every operator in the country is trying to get this trip, or you're trying to get that, and it's like, oh, just to make $500 more dollars. Yeah. It's like you just created so much more work and headache. It's like take your $500 less, move on, get the trip,
go to the next
and stop
one.
the chaos.
Sell 2 or 3 more trips in that meantime.
100%. Yeah. And so,
what do you think that does when a customer calls 5 or 6 people for the same trip? How much extra
I
work?
think the credibility just gets diminished, right? Yeah. I mean, it's we know if Chapman Freeborn calls, they're not shopping. They got a legit trip. The guy's booked him. He's already booked, or he's going to book it. So then the value add is that credibility that comes with that. Hey, I'm willing to do this, Y, and X, Y, and Z for that, for that broker to be able to get it.
I know for me, anytime I got a call from 5 different people, when I was an airplane operator, I was never flexible with pricing because I knew as an operator, I didn't have to be flexible. I knew one of those 5 people were going to lower their margin. But in the end, if you compared that, if one person called me and needed 10% off, the end user would have got a better price with me lowering my margin 10% versus maybe one of the brokers lowering theirs 5 just to win it.
Dan, we tell our customers, I just was telling a customer that last week, when they shop it backfires on them because what the operator understands is they're going to get the trip no matter what.
Yep.
Okay, and so they may even jack their price up from what it originally was, understanding, oh my gosh, this is, we must be the only game in town.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right on that.
What do you guys, when you get the same request from 5 different people, I mean, what's your guidance to the sales team?
I think Avinode really makes that happen because when we're sourcing a trip via Avinode, you have in front of you 10 to 12 to 100 people you could click on. And so it's about clicking the ones that you think are going to be in the best position, but you don't know who's in position for that trip. And so it is very natural that there are 5 people looking to fulfill that exact same trip. I think it becomes the next level when you start negotiating with 5 people. And maybe that's the difference because we're all shopping to everybody who may have availability, but don't play the $500 game.
But if it's legit, that person's going to call you.
Yeah.
And go, hey Kevin, I've got this. Yeah. Can you help me?
Yeah.
That's the person you're going to focus your energy towards.
Yeah.
When David calls hey, I've got this, as opposed to, well, I'm going to go in the WhatsApp group. I mean, you'll see the same trip posted in 4 or 5 different sections. I'm getting an airmail, I'm getting an Avinode, I'm getting a WhatsApp group, I'm getting a text. It's like, man, what is going on here?
Yeah.
And to your point, that drives that cost up.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's only a negative effect for the end user that wants to fly that multi-call shopping. And I understand if you've got your broker and you've got your operator, and those are the 2 people, you want to make sure, hey, do they have an airplane in their fleet? If not, let's see what my broker can do. I think that's the best structure for any retail client, and maybe even a jet card as well. Maybe that's the holy triumvirate of, okay, let me go to my 3 key points and find the best solution. But I think the moment you start calling 5 or 6 companies, I think it gets very difficult. Yeah. And I think that's where a broker can add a lot of value. Instead of having your assistant call 15 operators or 15 different people and they don't know if this person's legitimate, what the insurance limits are in this airplane, how qualified these pilots are, that's where I think a good operator, a good broker provides that value of let me do all that difficult work for you, and it's almost like an extension of your company.
Yeah.
The service after the sale is probably the most important part that the broker adds because the pricing is one thing.
Yeah.
But once the trip is now on the board or is active, the operator's job, safe, reliable, dispatch on time, coordinate all the very important logistical items. But what now needs to happen is everybody on the actual flyer side is well informed of what's going on. FBOs, catering, ground transportation. And so the broker value, he knows his customer. He knows what the customer needs and how he wants to be communicated to, because some guys don't want to be communicated through an app or a phone call or a text. They want a variation of that. And so the broker is the one that's actually building that repeat business and keeping the client wanting to fly privately and valuing the service that they're getting. So I think it's more after the sale than even the sale process.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And that just comes with trust. You trust who you're dealing with.
Yeah.
And building that relationship. That's why it's so important.
Awesome. Well, guys, really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on. If someone wants to reach out to you, will you outline what they need to do to get some more information on your company?
Yeah, so email address, kevin.wargo@flyalliance.com. We have a website, Fly Alliance, and I'm happy to share more about the company and the different partnerships that we want to work toward and as we build our market spread in parts, maintenance, and charter.
David, how about you if someone wants to contact you?
ChapmanFreeborn.com.
Yep.
So we're
You move
easily findable.
Everything
Websites
from
all around,
dogs out of Gaza to cargo to...
seriously.
Yeah.
Amazing stories in this business.
Yeah.
That's why
That's
I love
crazy.
it.
I tell you, I'm impressed. 450 boots on the ground around the globe.
Yeah.
And somebody that's been around for 50 years.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just impressive. So kudos to what you guys are doing.
Yeah.
Thanks, John.
Yep.
Thank you guys so much.
All right.
Really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Kevin.